Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the take on this Friday and a shortened week, but still a wild week once again. Yesterday, absolutely incredible. And we say that almost each and every day, but yesterday really does stand out. When you look at the markets, the direction we were going, the concerns of Ukraine, what's going on with Russia, and we get the kind of flip that we got yesterday, a 900 point plus move out of both the NASDAQ and the Dow from the downside to the upside. As a matter of fact, in the final 2 hours of the day, 700 points added to the Dow. It just gives you just an incredible run to the upside. Then you look over at the NASDAQ, same sort of a story. As a matter of fact, the gains on the day, almost all of what it got, which was 400 plus points to the upside, 436 points, a lot of that coming just in the final couple hours of the day. Just an incredible turn. And the volatility. We had volatility spiking early on, all the concerns. The markets were getting smacked to the downside. We were pushing towards 38 on the volatility index. We started the month of February at about 22. Then we've been talking about this mid-20s, getting close to 30, not really closing over 30. Then we finally closed over 30. But yesterday, 38, call it, for the highs, all the way pulling back to getting underneath that 30 level once again. Just absolutely incredible movement in the volatility index itself. So what was really going on? What was really the inner side of this in terms of the sectors themselves? Well, how about when you look at technology and you look at where it was, down 2.25%, to finish up on the day about 3.5%. What a flip that was. Then you look over across at all the other areas. How about the semiconductors as well? Because the NASDAQ really did have an unbelievable day from being down 2.5% to being up close to 3.5%. That turn. Look at technology. Look at the massive market cap names that were moving to the upside, and that semiconductor space. Absolutely. I know it's a subsector. We talk about this all the time, but unbelievable move as well. Down, call it almost 3% to actually finish the day up nearly 3.5%. Just incredible turn. Some of those names, NVIDIA from highs, or excuse me, I should say from lows to the highs, just an unreal run. And then you had AMD, and we had those call buying in AMD just a day or two ago. By the way, just as an update, the calls that I talked about the other day and the huge, massive call buying that we had seen, I am now out of that trade. Just give you a little idea. A lot of this are very, very short term, a lot expiring today. So some of that actually having to play out today as well. Just wanted to give you a quick update on that. So a lot of those security names as well were certainly in the spotlight, obviously, because the concerns over cybersecurity and what the Russians might be doing, and maybe even some of the other countries around the world. People are still looking at China, trying to figure out what those next steps are. Obviously, there's meetings between Putin and Xi, so there is so much going on. And now, when we look at some of the numbers that were delivered today, as a matter of fact, that might change a little bit anyway in terms of how the Fed's going to be acting. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now, but these markets certainly are having an incredible day. Oh, by the way, after AMD had that huge turnaround yesterday, went from 104 to 117, they actually decided to release that they were going to be buying back shares as well. I think it was $8 billion on a buyback. So just to add a little bit of extra something there. On the energy front, we did have some of the beta names moving to the upside, specifically APA yesterday. A lot of that, the gains that were there early on when oil made that jump up towards 100 and then pulled all the way back, call it towards 92. A lot of those gains obviously were given back off of that pullback after we started to go through a lot of the commentary coming from the president himself. So next, we start off with today. We remain very, very volatile. Early on, things actually starting to look not so bad. Pre-market, we're up 120 points or so on the Dow, up about 80 points on the NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ had a harder time holding on to that as we got into the trading day. It's been up and down, but mostly down, call it anywhere between 15 points down as much as maybe 60 points to the downside as far as the NASDAQ. But last I looked, actually perked back up into positive territory, and the NASDAQ was up about 10 or 15 points before I came on with you guys. So I look over at the Dow, 200, 220, 240, 260, 360, a nice solid move to the upside, again, coming from the Dow and from where we started, 120 in the pre-market all the way up 350, 360 points. We'll see what happens throughout the rest of the day. The shortened week and everything else that's going on, and obviously the world events there are many different influences on the market right now. The 10-year was around 2, pulled back a little bit. 197 was the last I'd seen on that. And when I look over at the volatility index, believe it or not, even though we're seeing this kind of a gradual rise in the first hour or so from the Dow, volatility is kind of hanging in there. We are still hanging, call it the upper 28s, near 29s. So certainly there is a little bit of volatility. We'll see if that persists as we get deeper into the trading day and people start pricing in the weekend. That's always something that you want to take a look at. So early on, what were some of the leaders? Well, financials are up about 1%. Staples, they were up about 1%. Energy up about 0.75%. Last I looked, energy is now up about 2%. I look over at the staples, they went from 1% to 1.75%. And the financials were 1%. Now they've been leading because they're up over 2% as well. So technology, a little bit of a turn, but that's been a much tighter range, just like the semiconductors. They were both down about 0.5% early on, closer to flat, maybe a little positive, a little negative. I'll tell you what, materials and industrials, those areas certainly have been hanging on, nearly 1% move to the upside. We'll see if all of this plays out throughout the rest of the session. We know how fast things can move. So I look over at what's really powering and some of the earnings and all of the different areas within the market itself. I look over at Etsy up about 12% early on. I saw Dish up about 8%. Monster, that was the final trade yesterday. Why was it my final trade? Because as I was looking, just as they were asking, hey, what are you seeing out there? I saw some of the activity that we'd seen in Monster, made a little bit of sense. I like the name, and voila, it was up about 5 or 6 or 7% early on. We'll see if it holds on to those gains. But there was some unusual option activity yesterday in the afternoon during the halftime report, and that's why that was my final trade at the end of the session. So early on, airlines also moving to the upside. You had United, you had Delta having a pretty nice day. Some of the Chinese names as well, NetEase and JD. I look over at Boeing up nearly 3%. Boeing's been a pretty volatile son of a gun. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean everything is working out. We had some weakness, not terrible weakness today, but there are a couple names. One name in particular that's getting whacked today is Zscaler. Now, that one was a name that actually they did okay with the earnings themselves, but the guidance, not what people were looking for. They hammered that stock. Last I looked, Zscaler, ZS was down about 18%. Moderna down a couple of percent as well. Netflix down a couple of percent. You get a little bit of the feel here. Intuit down about 3%. But the one that really getting smacked today is Foot Locker. Foot Locker down, last I looked, about 33% to the downside was the hit. And a lot of that was that disappointing outlook that they had. A lot of that having to be tied in with Nike. And obviously the supply and the major supply Nike is to Foot Locker. That certainly is something that hitting that stock dramatically today. So I do have two unusuals for you. We've had some great luck of late with some of these unusual option activities that we have seen out there. The other day, we had Overstock. We had yesterday. We also had some nice names that were moving to the upside today. Let's see if we've got any more. Kim, K-I-M, that's Kimco Realty. Now that was trading around 24.25, 24.25 is where it was trading, 24.25. But 6,000 of the March 25 calls getting bought for only 25 cents. That one definitely stuck out. It's not a name that we normally would see on the unusual, so that's a little bit unusual as well. But inexpensive, and it's not going to take a whole heck of a lot to get this stock moving to the upside. We'll see if they can be right on this one, but a nice 6,000 lot buyer there. Now, Cleveland Cliffs as well, CLF. Talk about this name a lot. We talk about the materials. I personally oftentimes lean much more towards Freeport, McMoran, some of those other names, but Cliffs is another one of these great names as well. Well, 10,000 of the May 23 calls, stock trading $20 even. The May 23 calls, 10,000 of those in a single print for $1.26 getting bought today. So that definitely stands out. Love to see big prints. When we see that, we know that's not retail, and we know that's not John and Pete. We know it's not any most likely any of you, but certainly a nice monstrous size trade that when we see something like that, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, those are the big guys, and that's what the follow the smart money that we talk about each and every day. Folks, have a great day of trading. I hope you have a great weekend. I know it's volatile markets. Definitely have to have discipline in these markets. When you've got gains, you've got to definitely make those decisions and do it before you've got those moves. When you buy, that's the way we've always worked it. When we buy, we already know where are we going to cut it and where are we going to trim it and where are we going to sell it. And that's something that you've got to stick to with discipline as well. So hopefully you can grasp that and do your very best. Have a great day of trading in these volatile markets.